iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you, and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16. Hi, welcome to iTestify. We're so glad that you could join us today. Today we have a very good friend on the show, Nina, who is a nurse, but who's currently in school for the CRNA program. Nina, what is the CRNA program, and why did you go into it?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, thank you for having me here, you guys. So CRNA stands for Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist. We like to put people to sleep. And it's a program, it's basically like an advanced nursing program. So for those who are already nurses, if you choose to go back to school and kind of further your education, the nurse anesthesia program is a great option. So I decided to go into that.
Wow. It's a really, I hear it's a really intense program, actually.
Yes, it can be an intense program. There's a lot of balancing of like just life, school, and then any trial that come your way. But that you can have fun too, and I'm trying to prove that during the course of my program.
Oh, incredible.
And by balancing life, you don't mean your own.
Because I have no life, right?
Well, you're here to share your testimony, which everyone's is so unique, but you definitely have more unique than maybe most can say that they can relate to. Where should we start?
I guess we can start with, since the CRNA school already rules my life, we can talk about the CRNA program. So I guess I can start with like why I wanted to be a nurse. It took a while for me to get to even becoming a nurse because my mom is a nurse, but that's not the reason why I decided to be a nurse. She actually would tell me, Nina, like, don't go into nursing. I was like, okay, Mom. Like, I just was like, I trust her. I was like, fine, I won't go into it. And then in college, I remember, I think, I was trying to be a pharmacist. I was trying to be pre-med, just kind of all over the place. And my personality changed to the point where I actually really care about people, investing in relationships, and I wanted to do more for the patient instead of just handing out drugs as a pharmacist or even just being their doctor, And I think people encouraged me to actually go the nursing route. And I remember I was like, Mom, why did you tell me not to be a nurse? Like, do you not think I can do it? She's like, no, I believe you can do it. My mom she came over from the Vietnam War. And my parents, I love them. They believe in a better life for me and my brother. And so she's like, I know nursing's really hard, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I wouldn't want you to go through a program like that. But I know you can do it. I just told you not to do it because I'm in the program and I know how hard it can be. And I was like, oh, okay, but you think I can do it? And she said, yes. And I was like, okay. So I decided to try nursing out.
Did she have another idea what you should do instead? Teacher? I don't know. What was she thinking?
No, my parents support me in whatever I decide to pursue. I think due to her own personal experience being a nurse, she just didn't want me to have a hard life. Okay. So I decided to still do it, and I really love being there for people when they're at their most vulnerable. And when you're in the hospital, you're really sick, you're not in the best state, and you're going through a really tough time, most likely. Healthy people don't go to the hospital, So for me as a nurse, I felt like I was able to kind of be there, try and be a positive, hopefully, nurse for them, and also take care of them and help them in the recovery process. So I've enjoyed it so far.
So was your mom right?
It is hard to be a nurse, yeah. Kudos to all the nurses out there. My mom was right.
We have another one among us.
Being a nurse myself, I could say that the program itself was really tough for me. So how much more the CRNA program. But even being a nurse, there's a lot of good things about it, but it can be very stressful at times too. So it really takes a special person, and it really takes a special person to be a CRNA. So.
Yes.
I guess it's all relative, isn't it? Because the difficulty of it is offset by the joy that you get from other people.
Yes. Yeah. I think at the time that I decided to go into the CRNA program, it seemed like a good idea. Now in the midst of it, I'm like, ooh, it's really hard. But I actually chose to become a CRNA due to a variety of circumstances that I had gone through. And so, as I mentioned, like I wanted to be there for people when they're at their most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And for the CRNA, they basically talk to the patients before they go into surgery. We have to talk to them about the anesthesia, which can be a scary thing.
Yeah.
People are like, am I going to wake up from the anesthesia? Am I going to stay asleep during the procedure? Am I going to die? I mean, very reasonable questions to have if you're unfamiliar with healthcare, and especially with anesthesia if you've never gone through it before. But I have actually undergone anesthesia myself when I had surgery. So one of the main reasons why I wanted to go back to school and become a CRNA is actually 4 years ago I had a medical complication in the form of kidney cancer. And that's actually the bulk of like what makes my testimony unique. So I can kind of talk about that story. So it started, like I said, 4 years ago. I had just become a nurse, and I was working for about a year. So I'm still a new nurse, don't really know what I'm doing. This has been a year under my belt. And I remember having some basically blood in my urine, which was weird because I'm like, this isn't normal, right? And I started having like blood clots that were about the size of my pinky, really. And I was like, that is definitely not normal. But I worked night shift as a nurse. So I was like, well, I just scheduled an appointment with a doctor, and I went to see her, and she's like, well, you don't have any pain, the bleeding, we'll just schedule an ultrasound in a couple days. And I was like, okay, if you're not worried, I'm not worried, it's great. My blood work and everything else was fine. So I was like, I had a couple night shifts, and I was like, I'll just work the night shifts, just some bleeding, whatever, like, can't be that big of a deal, right? So I remember going to work and telling my coworkers, and they're like, that's not normal, Nina. You should probably see it. I'm like, yes, I'm seeing a doctor. We're going to get an ultrasound. It'll be okay, you guys. And I remember finishing my 2 night shifts. And then being nights, I sleep during the daytime. So at about noon, I was woken up from my nap with this intense 10 out of 10 pain. And I had this immediate fear like, oh no, this is a lot worse than I thought. So I had an idea that something was wrong with my kidney, seeing as it's in the urine and there was bleeding, but I wasn't 100% sure what the cause was, obviously. So I had my grandparents, who lived next door at the time, rush me to the hospital, and it was the longest 30-minute ride of my life. I was like, Grandpa, can't you drive any faster? But he was a very good driver. We didn't get in a car accident. So we get to the hospital. My mom works at Adventist Medical Center up in Oregon, so I'm originally from Oregon. And so she met me down in the ED, and I tried to get a room. I was in a lot of pain to the point where I don't cuss, but I was in so much pain that I would alternate between cussing and then apologizing to my mom, like, I'm so sorry, I'm cussing, and then I'm sorry, and then my mom's like, you're entitled to you're okay, you're in a lot of pain. So it was really bad because I really don't cuss. So finally they gave me a room, and they gave me some pain meds, but it was still hurting. And I remember, the fetal position. I was curled up on my side, just like that. And the whole time, my dad come at that time. My family's a great support system, and I would not have been able to gone through this without them. So it was a long time before they finally did an ultrasound, right? And I knew it was bad when the tech was like, let me get the doctor. Oh, what's, okay, fine, get the doctor. And then we ended up doing a CT scan, which is a better scan to kind of see what's happening. And I remember in the midst of the pain, in the midst of, trying to get doped up on the pain medicine, I remember the doctor coming into the room, and she starts talking to me. She's like, we found a mass or a tumor that is growing from your right kidney. You have to have a nephrectomy, which is when they remove the kidney. And everything else she said after that, it was slow-mo, and everything was muted, and I just was in shock. I did not come here to have my kidney removed, you know what I mean? It was the last thing I thought could have been the case. So,
but they didn't know what
they didn't know. They said it was a tumor, most likely benign because I'm young and healthy, is what they said. So, I was like, Still a tumor.
So they hadn't biopsied or anything yet.
No.
They just saw the growth on the image and realized the best course of action was to remove the organ.
Correct. They said it was the size of a grapefruit.
That's pretty
Wow,
big. But you
that's
couldn't
so
feel
big.
that.
No.
You didn't notice it because you're small. So I mean,
Yeah. It's interesting because you couldn't ever feel it. And like I said, my urine and my blood work was fine. The only symptom I ever had was high blood pressure. But they're like, I'm Asian and I have a lot of sodium in my diet. Maybe I should exercise more. I was like trying to attribute it to like other reasons, right? I'm like high blood pressure, meh, because everything else was fine.
right.
But I'm realizing now it was attributed to basically the tumor growing from my right kidney.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
so just getting like a time frame here.
Sure,
so
sure.
from the time when you started having blood in your urine to the hospital was
Okay.
just
So end of
matter.
July was about when I had the symptom. Then 3 days later, I went into the hospital.
Okay. So,
And
this
so
was,
by now
this
it's
was
like-
happening really quickly.
Right. It was a lot to process, actually, now that you bring it up. And I was just kind of trying to go with the flow, there was a lot of emotions, My parents were super distraught. My dad even offered to give me his kidney. I know. I was like, it's okay, Dad. I can live with one kidney. But if the need ever arises, I'll keep that into consideration. Thank goodness, you can live with one kidney really well.
Yeah.
But it was very hard for the family because this is probably the most traumatic thing that had happened to me. My parents is like their baby girl. Like, we were doing so well in life. I was becoming a nurse, doing well in my career, and then now this happened, and it was so abrupt. At the time that they told me about the tumor, they didn't think it was genetic. They didn't think I was environmental because I really am a relatively healthy person. And so I was like, I'm not sure what happened, right? But we scheduled the nephrectomy, the surgery, because they did determine that was the best course of action. So everything went well. I was able to stay in the hospital, basically get prepped, have the surgery. I had some great family members show up and support me. But I remember, I met the anesthesiologist, and he was trying to build some rapport with me and just build a trusting relationship, basically. And I was like, I'm still terrified, I remember wheeling back into the pre-op area, getting ready for the surgery, and I was just like, oh God, help me, through this anesthesia. I for sure understand how scary it can be to go into anesthesia, but they were able to take care of me. I just zonked out. I remember I'm very weak. When it comes to getting pain meds or any kind of anesthesia, you give me a tiny bit and I'm out. So I remember basically, the surgery happened August 4 years ago at about noon or so, right? So I'm completely passed out until the next day at about 8. And the first thing I remember when I wake up is this beeping. And I'm like, it's there's an IV pump beeping. So I look over and I'm like, what's the beeping? And my mom's there, right? She looked and she said, oh, so they put an epidural in me for pain control. And the
Heart rate was dropping so low.
not my heart rate.
Oh,
It was the IV pump beeping,
Oh.
saying that the bag is empty.
Oh.
So my epidural bag, the pain medicine that was helping me be numb, basically all the way to my knee, so I didn't feel the incision that they gave me, was beeping saying it was empty, which meant that
Pain's gonna happen.
pain's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So it takes 15 minutes for the pharmacy to mix the medication
man.
together. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not good. I literally had a panic attack because I knew as soon as the medicine starts wearing off, the pain level will kind of start coming back up. The numbness will go away. And sure enough, I was like, I feel my knees again. I'm feeling my thighs. I'm trying to, and so my mom was trying to get me to get the nurse to come in and give me something to at least put me to sleep while they're trying to buy time to get me the medication. So they came in, they gave me Dilaudid, which does put me to sleep. But I remember right before I went to sleep, at this point, the numbness has gone here. And remember, for my nephrectomy, they actually cut me from here to here. And normally, they could do it on the side or in the back, but they decided to do basically an exploratory nephrectomy because they didn't know if the cancer had spread. So they cut me in the front, which is right through my abdominal muscles, and it was a little bit more painful than it could have been. So I definitely felt what it was like to have an incision right there because that was the last thing I remember was the pain, and then I passed out. So at that point, the rest was a little bit half a blur and half I remember because of all the medication I was on. So my mom told me later that the anesthesiologist had come by and attempted to give me an extra dose of medication in my epidural. But because of that extra dose, I wonder if maybe the epidural wasn't quite in the right place. Maybe it nicked my dura when he had placed it, because some of that medication went into my cerebral spinal fluid and got into my brain, and I started having these seizure-like activity. For the next 3 days. I had 6 different episodes ranging from 2 minutes to 15 minutes. And it's very unique. Like, I was still with it, so it wasn't a true seizure, hence they called it a seizure-like activity. But I would start with teeth chattering. So even to this day, when my teeth starts to chatter from the cold, I get kind of PTSD sometimes. So my teeth starts to chatter, and my head would start just twitching like this. I'm like, this is weird. And then my whole body would start to shake. And I would just do that for like the 2 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on how long, right? And every time I do that, they give me more medicine to make me sleep. So you can imagine I was very groggy during the whole process. Whenever it would wear off, I would start to maybe try and like walk and try and recover, and then same thing, teeth chattering, and I was like, oh no. And I got to be afraid of the teeth chattering at that point, you know? And so during the course of this time, I stayed in the hospital a lot longer than I should have because of all the complications I had. And it was, so the surgery happened on like August 4, which I think was like a Tuesday, because a couple of days later, on like a Thursday, the doctor comes in and she tells me, so it actually was cancer, not benign like we were thinking. They said it was chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. And they said, it's the best kind of kidney cancer you can have. I was like, is there such a thing? Okay, yeah. Thanks. And they said it's very slow growing. So kind of to answer your question before, I think you know how the body adapts when there's a pregnant, when a woman is pregnant, over the course of 9 months, the baby grows slowly, right? And things move around. Because I think my tumor was so slow growing, my body adapted to the growth before it became a grapefruit, you know? And that's why I wasn't able to feel it, and nothing else was abnormal.
When they say slow growing, what kind of progression are we talking about? Like over a period of a year, years?
They still didn't figure out the cause of it, because like I said, it wasn't genetic, so I can't blame my parents, and it's not environmental, so I can't blame my lifestyle. I'm thinking it was caused by an injury that I had in 8th grade through basketball. I was fouled a lot, hit a lot. I have a rib that sticks out because of it, and I think being like hurt a lot on the back and stuff, it probably triggered the abnormal cells in my body to start growing.
Wow.
So most likely, at that point, it's probably been like 10 years. I mean, when you think about the full amount of time, you know? Wow. So it was a lot to handle while I was in the hospital. You can imagine, like, I was like getting hit with all these complications, and now I'm like, oh, really, it was cancer. So now what does that mean? Am I gonna die? Like, no. And I don't care if the doctor says it's the best form of cancer, it's still cancer, like the C word, you know? And my grandparents, my grandpa's a retired pastor, and they would come in every day, they would put their hands on me and pray, and they would cry. So I really felt like I was dying. I was like, you guys, like, I'm still here, like, you know? It was a very difficult time for me, but I did have great support. People come to visit, and my workplace was great. They were able to accommodate me ditching work, you know, for the surgery and stuff. So eventually I was able to start walking again. My pain got a little bit better under control, and I was able to go home. But the story doesn't end there, because recovery at home was still hard. Now I was on basically taking pain meds by mouth, which isn't as good as the IV or the epidural, right? So my pain level was not the best. And every 3 hours I would wake up, my parents would give me my pain medicine, help me to the bathroom, and they did that around the clock for a few days. I was a shell of a person who you see right now, because, you know, I couldn't, it hurt to breathe, it hurt to talk. I couldn't laugh, like I wasn't myself, because they, you know, they cut me right here. And it hurts to do anything. So I was very weak. You know, I wasn't able to really do anything. I could barely walk to the bathroom. I could barely even sit up. And so the first couple of weeks going home, I didn't ask for visitors. I can't really hold a conversation at that point. So my parents were amazing to be able to to sacrifice so much for me to help me heal, and I will never forget that to this day. Eventually, I got, I had a walker. I was able to walk to the kitchen and it slowly built up enough energy to accept guests coming, to let my other family members know what happened, obviously, and to ask for more prayer. And I shared my story actually on YouTube. I did a YouTube video of it in order to share to my social media friends to ask for prayer. I think social media sometimes can be a negative thing, but I like to use it for basically a way to ask for prayer and encouragement and help. And so I use it in a good way, I hope. So during the recovery, I was it was very hard at home. I cried every night. I was like, God, why? Why did this happen, right? And I remember having a moment where I was I had a real one-on-one with God. I was like, okay, if you're done with me, okay, I accept that. If you're not done with me, then please help me get past this and use me in a way that I can encourage other people and love on them with my words and my action, and basically just try and witness for God, And obviously, he helped me get better from it. And one of the things I decided to do was make a bucket list, because I was like, hey, second chance at life, let's live it up, right? So I made a bucket list of just things that I always used money and time and fear as an excuse to not do, And one of the things was to become a CRNA. I didn't think I was smart enough to get into the program. And I was like, oh, why not? I'm just going to apply. So I looked around. Loma Linda had what I needed, and I applied, and I tricked them into accepting me. And that's how I made it into the program. But it came about because of my cancer, really. If I didn't have such a horrible thing happen, I would not have had the courage to pursue some of my dreams that I would have just put on the back shelf. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've seen some of the bucket list things that I don't think the list was ever completed. It just keeps growing. So I thought it was interesting, some of the things you did, like this ginormous puzzle.
Yes.
I mean, how many pieces was it? 5,000 or 3,000 or something?
It was 32,000.
32,000 pieces.
That you did all by yourself?
I would have some of my friends are really curious about it, so they would come over and I would let them do a couple pieces. So I had a little bit of help from my friends.
Yeah.
But
different traveling places you've gone. I mean, it's cool, the things that you're getting to enjoy. It's interesting what brought it about, but because of it, you're experiencing life in a way you might not have.
Yes.
Otherwise. Was there any Bible verses that maybe?
Yeah, actually before that, I had one question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
What that has done in terms of your relationship with God.
Yes.
Specifically the bucket list mentality on what that has done with your relationship with God.
So I will say that heart-to-heart that I mentioned during the time of my cancer, I was giving God an ultimatum, right? Okay, if you're done with me, let it be quick. If you're not done, use me to the best of your ability. And for me, I've never been a very good, I don't preach, I don't lead Bible studies, I don't lead worship, I don't do that kind of stuff, but I feel like God has really blessed me with, this sounds weird, but blessed me with trials in my life to use in my testimony to share to other people. I like talking about myself, and I talk about my trials, and God has really blessed that to be able to see, you can have joy in your trials. It's not a common emotion to have, obviously, when you're going through hard stuff. And at the time that I was going through the cancer, I wasn't happy. It was very hard. But looking back, I think while it was the worst thing that happened to me, it might have been one of the best things as well, because of everything that happened since. So with the bucket list mentality, I think I had more courage to pursue things that I, like I mentioned, didn't have the courage before. And one of the things is I really love loving on people, and I think God, through the cancer, showed me his love, and showed me it through my family, through the friends that supported me. And I was able to then, because my love cup is full, I'm able to then share my love with other people. So part of that is obviously becoming a CRNA. I really do believe this is the track that God wants me to pursue.
That was the question I was thinking about. Usually people have a situation that is traumatic. They want to help people in similar situations. So why CRNA versus like oncology? As an oncology nurse, why CRNA? Like how's that impacting your life?
So part of it was I couldn't physically, I think, handle ICU nursing anymore because I only have one kidney, and sometimes the patients are not, they're kind of delirious or they're not in their right mind, and if they kick me right here or they punch me, which can happen, then I'm out, right? So I knew I needed to go back to school in some form or another, or at least switch to, maybe I could have done oncology nursing. But for me, I'm also very sensitive. And to see people going through cancer all the time, you know, I can try to relate to them and be a supporting hand, but I'm also human and I have those emotions, and I think it would be maybe too much for me. Sometimes when I help anesthesia for patients who have cancer, even kidney cancer, I have to really pray and think about how I can help them objectively, because I still can tell them, I know what you're going through. I really do know what you're going through. I've been through it too. I've had all these complications. I know what it's like to have cancer. At the same time, I need to be a good provider for them and not let my emotions get in the way. And I feel like oncology nursing might have been too much for me.
That's true. That's good. Yeah, that's true.
But I enjoy telling people that I know what it's like to have all this stuff happen. I know how afraid you are. And as a CRNA, you have 5-10 minutes to earn the patient's trust before they basically give your life in your hands. You know, you have to put them to sleep, keep them alive, wake them up. And I've enjoyed the process so far. I enjoyed gaining their trust, and just being able to hopefully witness for God through, like I said, my words and my actions, you know.
Okay, sorry, now the verses.
Okay, yeah.
I cut Rita.
We have a very short time. But
Yes. So at the time I did my heart-to-heart with God, I remember actually a Bible verse is Jeremiah 29:11. It's like a classic verse, right? But I'll read it right now. It just says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future." And I held on to that during the recovery process, because I was like, this must be God's sign that I am meant to keep living, keep loving, keep witnessing for Him. So I really enjoy that verse, and I know it's a classic verse, but it rings true in my heart. And the second verse was actually one that I came about when I was going in Chubb Club. I am a proud member of Chubb Club. So it's a group of people that like to run Sunday mornings. And Carlos, he actually told me 2 Timothy 1:7, which has helped me throughout the CRNA program. And it's basically, "For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind." And that is another verse that has helped me throughout any trial that can come in my life too.
Thank you so much, Nina. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure one of your biggest bucket list items is being on the new earth, right? With all your friends and family. Thank you all for watching. So glad that you're able to join us. Please join us the next time. Keep us in your prayers, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Also continue to look on the LLBN website and also our Facebook page. Have a great rest of the day.